Hello, brothers. Welcome back to the channel. Before we get started today, make sure you hit that subscribe button below so that you can get notified every week when I post a new video helping guide guys to become the kind of man that their woman worships. Most men think boundaries are about saying no, but true boundaries aren't about rejection, they're about construction. And without clear boundaries, your relationships will turn toxic or they'll turn you into somebody that you don't even recognize. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build boundaries to protect your peace, create deeper self-respect and respect from your partner, and transform your love life. I'm going to talk about what the main problems that I see amongst men are when it comes to creating respectful and productive boundaries, share a personal experience in my life of how the lack of boundaries created a relationship that was silently toxic and eventually ended in catastrophe. And towards the end of this video, make sure you stick around because I'm going to share practical tips of how you can lead with mature masculinity in your relationship and set boundaries that aren't walls, but actually create a frame for your relationship to flourish on top of. If you're new to the channel, I'm Isaac Wathen. I'm a love and relationship coach for men, and everything that I share primarily is from experience because love and relationship has been the primary arena for me to learn about myself and to develop personally into the man that I can be proud of and into the man that my woman worships. When it comes to men and boundaries, the problem is twofold. And both problems that arise with boundaries come from a fear of abandonment, come from pushing your woman away, come from presenting something to her that our fear is that she will then run away. And so the first problem that comes with this fear of abandonment or this fear of not being loved or left behind is that men don't set any boundaries at all. They say yes to things that feel like a no. They tolerate disrespect or emotional volatility because they believe that's what love requires. And deep down, they're terrified that asserting their truth and what they really need or want will push her away. And usually this comes from some deep-seated program that was initiated in childhood. But these relationships, when boundaries aren't set, they become codependent. It becomes a merging into a mediocrity milieu where every night you are on the couch watching Netflix together when deep down you would rather be researching a business idea or reading or bettering yourself, or maybe you'd be out with the boys. But every now and then, Netflix on the couch isn't so bad, but when it is disrupting your ability to show up and become the man that you want to be because of your lack of boundaries, that is toxic. That is unhealthy. And while the toxicity may not be loud or violent, underneath the surface, you abandoning yourself is toxic. You becoming less of who you are in a relationship because of your lack of boundaries is toxic. So the other problem that happens with men in boundaries is that men set boundaries to control. And this also comes from a deep-seated fear of abandonment or an insecurity that they aren't lovable. So when we set boundaries that are to control instead of to honor ourselves, it looks like don't talk to other men or don't go out without me. And these are driven by the fear of, oh, she's going to find someone else. Oh, if I give her too much freedom, she's going to create so much distance that we will then be separate or that she will leave me. So the first problem that happens with men is that they don't set any boundaries at all because they're scared that speaking their truth will push their woman away. Or the second problem is that they set boundaries to control their woman. The healthy alternative to that is that we set boundaries out of self-respect, not out of insecurity. My personal experience was the former. I had no boundaries, did everything for her, wanted to make sure her needs were met, her desires were met, and forgot all about mine. And so we merged into that milieu of mediocrity on the couch watching Netflix each night. I pushed my hopes and dreams to the side and made this relationship essentially my whole personality. And once we got years into the relationship, there became some circumstances where I would try to set boundaries. For example, the way that she behaved when she was out partying with her friends and drinking. And because I'd set the precedent of not setting boundaries from the beginning of the relationship, setting boundaries 2 years in became nearly impossible, and those boundaries weren't respected. And what I didn't do was then leave, because boundaries aren't about what she can't do. Boundaries are more about what you will do when those boundaries are breached. And let me be clear here, boundaries are not punishment, boundaries are not ultimatums, boundaries are not walls, they are containers. They are instruments that can be used to build an environment where the relationship can flourish, where they can create a frame that the relationship can grow on top of, and also where each person can thrive individually, where each person can feel respected and trusted, valued and loved. I want to double tap on this concept of the frame, of boundaries being a frame and not a wall. You can think of a plant that likes to crawl up and over things, is that you need to have some type of frame, something there for the plant to grow on top of, not a wall to block its growth, but something that the plant can grip. And you can think of boundaries as the frame for the relationship to grow, for there to be some sort of guidance so that the relationship grows in the direction that you want it to, so that it grows in a healthy direction and not a toxic one. Because when there are no banks of a river, it's chaotic, it's directionless, there's water everywhere, there's no containment. With the banks of the river, which you can think of as the boundaries in relationship, the water is directed, just like you want to direct your relationship to a place, again, where both partners feel loved, respected, and valued. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you identify with one of the two problems I mentioned earlier. Either you don't set boundaries at all or set very few boundaries, or you set boundaries from a place of insecurity, trying to control your partner or prevent her from leaving you. And if either one of those cases is true for you now or is true for you in the past, then the next part of this video is going to be extremely valuable for you, because I'm going to share some practical tips of how you set healthy boundaries that are a frame for the relationship to grow on and not constrictive walls. So the first tip is to identify at least one area in your relationship where you feel tension or internal resistance, something that doesn't feel completely safe or healthy or like love for you, and articulate that to yourself clearly first. Write it down in your journal before you express it to her. And when you come into that conversation, you don't need to approach from square one as this is the boundary, take it or leave it. Allow yourself to enter the conversation from a place of collaboration and express the way that you're feeling first. What that might sound like is something about this feels off for me, and I want to explore why. And do some of that exploration on your own first so that you have a few clues and you're not just bringing a blank slate to the table and asking your woman to uncover everything for you. Come to the table with some of that work being done, but you don't need to do that work on your own, because a relationship isn't personal work. A relationship is collaborative work. So that's the first tip, is identify that one area where you feel tension or internal resistance, articulate it to yourself clearly first, and identify some clues as to why you feel that way and what you might need before then having a collaborative conversation with your partner. The second practical tip is to prioritize the relationship that you have with yourself over your romantic relationship, over any other relationship in your life. It is the most important relationship that you will ever have. And when it comes to boundaries, honoring that relationship is questioning your motivation for setting the boundary? Is it you're setting the boundary from a place of self-respect? Or are you setting the boundary from a place of insecurity? Are you setting the boundary to honor your relationship with yourself? Or are you setting the boundary to control your partner's behavior, right? So always me first, right? It's not about what they can't do, it's about what you will do. If this was to happen, how will I respond in a way that I'm in integrity with myself? So when you are setting boundaries, always look within first, check your motive, make sure that you are setting it from a place of self respect and not a place of insecurity. The third is to frame your boundary setting, as this is how I'm protecting the space in which our love can thrive, especially if you have a partner who values freedom, or you have a partner who's perhaps a little bit avoidant in their attachment, is that you offer the boundary as a way of protecting your love, not of restricting their freedom. And the fourth practical tip is be open to flexibility. When we have a structure that is too rigid, it can break, it could snap easily. But when we have a structure that is flexible, then love can dance safely within it. Again, boundaries are not ultimatums, they're not things that you just stick on your partner's desk and say this is the way that it is. They happen in collaboration, and as your relationship grows, as you grow as individuals, it makes sense to return to boundaries that you've set and understand if you want to keep them the same, if you want to add some asterisks or some nuances to them. So your relationship must be able to grow flexibly, and boundaries sometimes get to change. So don't be too fixed, black, white, yes, no, on boundaries. Always be open to revisiting them and recollaborating with your partner while continuing to prioritize your self-respect. If boundaries have been a challenge for you in the past, or you just want to learn more about how you can effectively set them and lead from mature masculinity, make sure you take the free quiz linked in the description, and I will send you over a personalized video identifying your main opportunities for growing your relationships with boundaries. I'll send that over to you just for you. Now, before we end this video, you might be wondering, where are the areas that I should consider setting boundaries? So I just want to list a few of them out, right? Communication, response times, showing up to places on time, what types of relationships that you have with the opposite sex outside of your romantic partnership, the way emotions are expressed, your preferences about alone time and sexual intimacy, time you spend on technology, how you guys resolve conflicts, your finances, and your vision and your purpose. So those are all areas to consider setting boundaries, and as relationships grow, you probably will set boundaries in all of those areas. And a question you might have now is, when is it too soon to set boundaries in a relationship? And the truth is that the moment that you feel like something is a bit off or out of alignment, or there's been something that's been communicated or sent your way that makes you feel not valued, not loved, not respected, in that moment is when you should set the boundary. And that may be very early on in the relationship, after the first or second date. But the woman who is for you, who you are truly compatible with, I promise, will respect you setting a boundary early on, especially when it's done with compassion and self-respect, not done from a place of fear or insecurity. She will love the way that you set a masculine container around your relationship, and she will love the way that you're prioritizing your relationship with yourself. So it's never really too early to set boundaries in a relationship. Now, just be honest with yourself about if you're being overbearing. And the question is, am I acting from a place of fear and insecurity, or am I acting from a place of self-respect? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and like this video. And if what I say on this channel resonates with you and you think one-on-one time with me would be valuable, book a 15-minute curiosity call with me. That link is in the description, and let's talk about what your next steps are to become the kind of man that your woman worships.